right. I think this is our last chapter, chapter 15. So last chapter, Judd was caught killing a doe, and it's not deer hunting season, and you're not supposed to kill the mama deer. So basically, Marty blackmails Judd into giving him Shiloh to work. In exchange, he won't talk about the deer, and he has to work for him. Closer I get home, though, the bigger the grin on my face. So when I burst in the kitchen, I got a smile from ear to ear. Dad's having his coffee and Ma's in the living room listening to the Sunday morning service by Brother Jonas. She watches him every Sunday at 7, which tells me what time it is already. Where you been, says Dad, and I can tell Ma's paying attention too. You up and gone, we got to worrying. I slid into my chair, almost have to push my cheeks in to keep the smile from going all the way around my head. I went to see Judd Travers, I say. I'm still breathless, and I'm buying his dog. Ma gets up, comes to the kitchen doorway. What? Thought he wasn't selling, Dad says, looking at me hard. He wasn't, but I talked him into it. He needs help around his place and says if I work hard for him for 20 hours, $2 an hour, that will pay the $40 he wants for Shiloh. Ma's smile getting broader by the minute. I don't believe it, she says. Shiloh's yours? Not yet, but he will be, and we don't have to take him over to Judd's. Before I can get the last word out, she's got her arms around me, squeezing the breath from my chest. I think Shiloh can smell Judd Travers on me. He can smell that deer's blood, too, I know by the way he sniffs my shoes. But finally, he just can't stand it no more. He's joyful I'm back, and he's licking me, welcoming me home. But Dad's still studying my face. I can't figure it, Marty. Judd seemed pretty definite about keeping that dog. What was said between you? I really didn't want to lie no more. But if I tell Ma and Dad about everything except about the deer, that's lying by omission. Ma says not telling the whole truth. Let me read that again. I don't think I've read that right. If I tell Ma and Dad everything except about the deer, that's lying by omission. Ma says that's not telling the whole truth. But if I tell about the deer after promising Judd I wouldn't, then I would have lied to Judd. Rather lie to Judd than my folks, but I figure it this way. Dad wouldn't report Judd even if he saw him shoot a doe out of season, because that's just the way it's always been around here. But that don't make it right. Of course, but with him feeling that way, nothing's going to change if I do tell him about Judd and the deer, and because I promised not to, I don't. Right now, the most important thing to me is Shiloh. Told him I wasn't going to give Shiloh back no matter what, I tell Dad. You said that to Judd Travers, Dad asks, scooting back in his chair. The only thing left to say, only thing I could think of to do, I hadn't tried already. Was going to tell him he could take me to court and I'd tell the judge how he kicked his dogs, but that didn't have to go that far. Guess he needs help around his place. Ma turns to Dad. You know, I think it's 'cause Shiloh was hurt. I think he figures that dog's never going to be what it was, and that's why he was willing to let it go. Figured he got rid of a lame dog in the best of the bargain. That's what I figured, I say. At last, Dad begins to smile. So we got ourselves a new member of the family, he tells me, and that's the nicest thing I heard him say, and nicest thing I heard said in this house in my life. Then Dara, Lynn, and Becky wake up, sad-faced because they think that we got to take Shiloh over to Judd's. I tell them the news, and Dara Lynn, and she starts dancing. Becky joins in, whirling herself around, and then Shiloh, smiling his dog smile, everybody whooping and carrying on. Ma turns off the TV, makes waffles with a big pat of margarine in the center of each one, and hot homemade brown sugar syrup filling the plates. She even makes a waffle for Shiloh. We're going to make that dog sick if we're not careful. Now all we got to worry about is how we can afford to feed him as well as ourselves, Dad says. But there's food for the body and food for the spirit, and Shiloh sure enough feeds our spirit. We about pet Shiloh to death. Every time he turns around, someone's got a hand on him somewhere. I take him out for his first gentle run since he got hurt. Once up the hill, him running free, the good feeling inside me grows bigger and bigger, and I have to let it out. I hunch up my shoulders. You! Shiloh jumps and looks at me. I go again, out of joy and jubilation, the way they do in church. And suddenly, Shiloh joins in with a bark. A pitiful kind of bark, like he's got to be taught, but it's a happy bark and he's learning. The only bit of sadness left in me is for that deer, wondering, too, about whose business it is when someone breaks the law. Wonder if Dad wouldn't never tell on Judd no matter what he done. Bet he would. There's got to be times that what one person does is everybody's business. Monday afternoon at 3 o'clock, I'm waiting on Judd's porch when he pulls up. All his dogs is chained outside of the house and they get to barking like crazy. I don't try to get near him because a chained dog can be mean. I've already restacked Judd's woodpile, but he wants me to do it again. Put the big pieces here, the little ones there. He's looking mean and grumpy, like maybe he's disgusted with himself for letting me have that dog so easy. When I finish the woodpile, Judd hands me the hoe. You see that garden? I nod. See that corn? I want the dirt chopped up so fine I can sift it through my fingers, he tells me. Now I see what he's getting at. He's going to make it so there's no way I can please him. I'll put in my 20 hours and he'll tell me my work wasn't good. And he wants his dog back. I hoe till I got blisters on both hands, sweat pouring down my back. I wish I could do my work in the early morning before the sun is so fierce, but I don't complain. I take off my t-shirt, finally wrap it around my head to keep the sweat out of my eyes, and I keep on. Shoulders are red, so I know they'll hurt worse than anything the next morning, and they do. Next afternoon, Judd sets me to scrubbing down the sides of his trailer and his porch, shining up the windows, raking the yard. He sits on a folding chair in the shade, drinking a cold beer. Don't offer me nothing, even water. I hate him more than the devil. My mouth is so dry it feels like fur. Third day, he goes and puts out a quart jar of water for me when I go to pick his beans. I bend over them rows so long, dropping beans into a bucket, I think I'm going to be bent for life. When I'm through, Judd sort of motions me to the porch like I can sit there if I want while I drink my water. I almost fall on that porch, glad to be in the shade. Looks like you got yourself some blisters. I'm okay, I tell him, and take another long drink. How's Shiloh, he asks, first time he's called the dog by that name. He's doing fine. He's still got a limp, but he eats good. Judd lifts his beard to his lips. Would have been a good hunting dog if I could have just kept him home. The other dogs never run off. Well, I think about that for a while. Each one's different. That's the truth. Kick one and he just goes under the porch for an hour. Kick another and he goes off and don't come back. I'm trying my best to think of what to say to that. Like, how come he has to kick him at all? Then I figure nobody likes to be preached at no matter how much he needs it, least of all Judd Travers, who is 30 years old if he's a day. Some dogs, it just makes them mean when you kick them, I say finally. Other dogs, it makes them scared, and Shiloh got scared. Never beat my dogs with a stick, Judd goes on. Never did that in my life. I don't say anything right away. Finally, I ask, how your dog's doing? Raring to go out rabbit hunting. We look over at his 3 dogs all pulling at their chains and snarling at each other. That biggest dog now, Judd goes on. He's the loudest squaller I got. I can tell from his racket whether he's following a fresh track or an old one, if he's running a ditch, swimming, or treed a coon. Do y'all understand any of that? That's pretty good, I say. Littlest one, he's nothing but a trashy dog. He'll run down almost anything except what I'm after. Hope the others will learn something. Learn him something. And the middle dog, well, she gives a lot of mouth too, even barks at dead trees. The dogs were fighting now, and Judd throws his beer can at him. Y'all shut up, he yells. Hush up. The can hits the biggest dog, and they all scatter. Don't much like being chained, Judd says. Well, I guess nobody would. I put in 10 hours that week, meaning I make up 20 of the dollars I owe him. Got one more week to go. When I leave of an afternoon for Judd's, Shiloh goes with me just so far. Then he gets to whining and turns back. I'm glad he won't go on with me. Don't want him anywhere near Judd Travers. Monday of the second week, it seemed like Judd's out to break my back or spirit or both. This time he's got me splitting wood. I got to roll a big old piece of locust wood over the stump with his side yard, drive a wedge in it, and then hit the wedge with the sledgehammer again and again till the wood falls apart in pieces to fit his wood stove. Then another log and another. I can hardly get the sledgehammer up over my head, and when I bring it down, my arms is so wobbly my aim ain't true. I almost drop a hammer. This ain't a job for me, and if Dad saw what Judd was making me do, he'd tell him it wasn't safe. But Judd's out to teach me a lesson, and I'm out to teach him one, so I keep at it. I know it takes me twice as long as Judd to split this wood, but I don't stop. All the while, Judd sits on his porch, drinking his beer and watching me sweat. Sure does his heart good, I can tell. Then he says something that almost stops my heart cold. Laughs and says, "Boy, you sure are putting in a whole lot of work for nothing." "Shiloh's something," I tell him. "You think you're going to get my dog just 'cause you got some handwriting on a piece of paper?" Judd laughs and drinks some more. "Why, that paper's not good for anything but to blow your nose on. Didn't have a witness." I look at Judd. "What do you mean? You don't even know what's legal and what's not, do you?" "Well, you show a judge a paper without a witness signature, he'll laugh you right out of the courthouse. Got to have somebody sign that he saw you strike a bargain." Judd laughs some more. "And nobody's up here but my dogs." I feel sick inside, like maybe I could throw up. I can't think of what to do or say, so I just lift the sledgehammer again and I go on splitting that wood. Judd laughs even harder. "What are you, boy? Some kind of fool?" When I don't answer, he says, "What are you breaking your back for?" "I want that dog." I tell him, and I raise that sledgehammer again. That night, I'm sitting on the porch when Ma and Dad Shiloh in my lap, and I check it out. "What's a witness?" I say. "Somebody who knows the Lord Jesus and don't mind telling about it," says Ma. "No, the other kind. Somebody who sees something happen and signs that it's true," says Dad. "What you got in your mind now, Marty? You make a bargain with somebody and you got to have a witness?" I ask, not answering. "If you want it done right and legal, I suppose you do. I can't bear Dad to have to know I was so stupid I made an agreement with Judd without a witness. What you thinking on? Just how you sell something is all, land and stuff." "You're not trying to sell some of my land off for that dog, are you?" "No," I tell him, "but I'm glad I got him off track. I sure am worried. Every trace of that deer's gone now. I don't know what Judd's done with the meat, rented him a meat locker somewhere, but there's no bones around, no hide. I report him now. I can't prove a thing." The next day, Judge Travers calls me dumb. Sees me waiting for him on the steps and says I must have had a head as thick as a coconut. Didn't he already tell me that paper wasn't worth nothing? I look at him straight. "You and me made a bargain," I said, "and I aim to keep my part of it. What you want me to do today?" Jed just points to the sledgehammer again and doubles over laughing like it's the biggest joke he ever played on somebody's life. I can feel the sweat trickle down my back and I ain't even started yet. 4 o'clock comes and I've finished all that wood, but Judd pretends he's asleep. Got his head laid back, his mouth half open, and I know it's just another way he's got to trick me. Wants me to sneak on home, and then he'll say I never kept my part of the bargain. So I go to his shed, put the sledgehammer back, take out the sickle, and I tackle the weeds down by his mailbox. Work on them weeds for a whole hour, and then when 5 o'clock comes, I start back toward the shed. I see him watching me. I walk over. "Sickle's getting dull, Judd. You got a whetstone around? I can sharpen it for you." In the shed. I go get it, sit out on a stump, and running the whetstone over the blade. "It's past 5 o'clock, says Judd. "I know." "I ain't gonna pay you 1 cent more," he says. "It's okay." I never saw a look on a man's face like I see on his. Pure puzzlement is what it is. The thing I decide on when I head for Judd's again the next day is that I got no choice. All I can do is stick to my side of the deal and see what happens. All in the world I can do. If I quit now, he'll come for Shiloh and we're right back where we started. I don't want to make him mad. No use having a winner and a loser or the bad feelings would just go on. Don't want to have to worry about Shiloh when he's running loose and I'm in school. Don't want to feel that Judd's so sore at me he'll think up any excuse at all to run his truck over my dog. Only sign in this world we're making progress is the water Judd puts out for me. This day it even has ice in it. And Judd don't say one more word about witness. In fact, when I'm through working and sit down on this porch to finish the water, Judd talks a little more than usual. The only bond we got between us is dogs, but at least that's something. I decide to say something nice to Judd. Give him a compliment. Tell him how good looking his dogs are. Maybe giving him a compliment's like filling a balloon with air. You can actually see his chest swell up. 40, 30, and 45, he says when I tell about his dogs. Those are their names now? Well, that's what I paid for them. If they had a little more meat on their bones, I figure they'd be the best looking hounds in Tyler County, I tell him. Judd sits there turning his beer around in his hand. Maybe could use a little more fat. I nurse my water along a little too. When you first get interested in hunting, I ask him, your pa take you out when you was little? Judd spits. I didn't know a man could drink beer and chew tobacco at the same time, but Judd does. Once or twice. One only nice thing about my dad that I remember. It's the first time in my life I ever felt anything like sorry for Judd Travers. If you weighed it on a postal scale, it would hardly move the needle at all, but I suppose that was a fraction of an ounce of sorry for him somewhere inside me. When I thought on all the things I'd done with my own dad and how Judd could only remember hunting, well, that was pretty pitiful for a lifetime. Thursday. When I get there, Judd's meanness has got the best of him again because I can see he's running out of work for me to do, just giving me work to make me sweat. Dig a ditch to dump his garbage in, he says. Hoe that cornfield again. Scrub that porch. Weed that bee patch. But close on to 5 o'clock, he seems to realize that I'm only going to be there one more time. I worked real hard that day. Did anything he asked and done it better than he asked me to. Well, one more day, Judd says when I sit down at last with my water and him with his beer. What are you going to do with that dog once he's yours? Just play. Love him. We sit there side by side while the clouds change places, puff out, and the wind's blowing them this way and that, and I'm wondering how things would have turned out if it hadn't been for that deer. If I'd have just knocked on his door 2 weeks ago and told him I wasn't giving up Shiloh, what would have happened? To tell the truth, I think Ma's right. Judd would have sold him to me, by and by, because of Shiloh's limp. Judd's the kind that don't want that in any dog. Same as he don't want a dent or a scratch in any kind of his pickup truck. Makes him look bad, he thinks. His truck's got to be perfect to make up for all the ways that he's not. That last day I worked for Judd, he inspects every job I do. He finds faults with the least little thing. Keeps pestering me, making me hanging around, do my work over. When it's time to go, I say, well, I guess that's that then. Judd don't answer. He just stands in the doorway of his trailer looking at me, and then I get the feeling he's going to go tell me that I can take that paper he signed and use it for kindling. Tell me I can call the game warden if I want. There's not a trace of that deer left. 2 weeks of work I put in for him was just long enough for the rain to wash away the blood, for the grass to spring back up again where the deer was shot. He still don't say anything, though, so I start off for home, my chest tight. Just a minute, says Jed. I stop. He goes back inside the trailer, me waiting there in the yard. What am I going to say? He tries that. What am I going to do? Then Judd's back's in the doorway again, and he's got something in his hand. Comes down the steps halfway. There's half a page left. I wonder what it is. Here, he says, and it's a dog's collar. An old collar, but better than the one Shiloh's got now. Might be a little big, but he'll grow into it. I look at Judd and I take the collar. I don't know how we done it, but somehow we learned to get along. Thanks a lot, I tell him. You got yourself a dog, he says, and goes inside again and don't even look back. I get home that evening and Ma's baked a chocolate-layered cake to celebrate. A real cake, too. No Betty Crocker. After dinner, Ma and Dad on the porch, the four of us rolls around on the grass together. Dear Lynn, Becky, Shiloh, and me. Becky tries to give Shiloh her butterfly kiss. But he don't hold still long enough to feel her eyelashes bat against him and just got to lick everywhere on her face. And long after Becky and Darlene goes inside, I lay there on my back in the grass, not caring about the deuce, Shiloh against me crosswise, his paws on my chest. I look at the dark closing in, the sky's getting more and more purple, and I'm thinking about how nothing is as simple as you guess. Not right, not wrong, not Judd Travers, not even me or this dog I got here. But the good part is I saved Shiloh and opened my eyes some. Now that ain't bad for 11. The end.